Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another Creative Zone webinar under the She Leads initiative. That it's a joint venture between the Dubai Businesswomen Council and Creative Zone, where we are empowering and accelerating 100 led women entrepreneurs. Welcome to this session. Today we have Balvinder Singh Pawar, who is a professor and business mentor at IE Business School University in Spain, in Madrid. He's a founding partner and board member and director of Booster Space Industries and Airdrone, among many other things. He has a very extensive CV. He's going to be telling us a little bit about his experience and for today's session. Today's session is all about building a high-performance company. So maybe Balvinder, give us a small background into who you are, what took you to become an expert in this specific field.
No, thank you very much, Lorenzo. Thank you for everyone for joining. It's a real pleasure to share and create collaboration. I mean, I studied business and finance, and initially I didn't want to do that. I wanted to study psychology, but being a son of Indian parents, they said, be practical. But then I was thankful to business and finance because it's the foundation of our economy. But later I studied mediation because I wanted to help people go through conflict. So I realized really what I really want to do is to help people on their journey and help people in their growth. So that's why now I split half my time between teaching and training to students and doing work with consultancy with companies. And the other half, I'm actually building different projects. So projects where my heart is. So it's going to space, what's more exciting to that? Recently, more in well-being, things around mental health, which are very important today, even more so with COVID, and things like hydroponic food production. So I've been able to follow my heart. Sometimes things haven't worked, but you learn from that. And that's the classic joke we have with the startups in America. If you haven't failed, we won't invest in you, because when you're good and everything's fine, you're floating around eating your ice cream. But when things fail, you're conscious of why. And what you can do is try to apply the learnings to do better next time. So you're more aware. So this is a bit of the background. There's a lot to it. I've been lucky because I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do when I was young. I was open to many new things. And I've been able to travel to 70 countries, be an aid worker, work with astronauts, work with incredible young talent, and also have an opportunity like this to be with Lorenzo and our family of people watching us. So really, grateful.
That's excellent, Balvinder. And I see some comments here now. They're saying, love the heart-centered way of being. I mean, right from the beginning, I can say you have this beautiful Zen approach to what you are talking about. I think we're all very much looking forward for today's session. So I understand that you have a few slides to share.
Yes.
And as always, we encourage all our attendees to send your questions on the Q&A section, or even here on the webinar chat. Either way, I'm happy to try to read those across, bring them to Balvinder as we go along. Don't be shy, send your questions or your ideas, and Balvinder will guide us through this presentation of today that is about building a high-performing company.
Thank you, Lorenzo. And for people to know, we have an hour. We're going to make the most of that time. This is a presentation where we have a lot of thinking points to jump into and debate. So what we'll be doing, I'll be talking through 2 or 3 of the slides. Then I'll stop, and then with Lorenzo we'll have a conversation, and we invite you to participate in that, okay? So it's a very broad subject. What do we mean by high-performing company? There's so many different aspects to this. There's a financial part, strategic part, the people part. My part is more around the people and company culture. So the first thing I start with is culture. If we have the right company culture, we can be successful. If we talk about going digital, that's fine, but we have to understand, why do people want to do something? So for me, always culture becomes first, because this is the big foundation of your company. And if you have the right culture, you're more likely to survive. And if we think about innovation, people come up with ideas and not robots. So if you don't look after your people, you're not going to have that company that has that foundation or has that creativity. I'm always amazed by companies that look the same resources, same mission, same amount of investment, but how come this one is going up and this one is going down? There's something about what goes inside when you bring a group of people together. So also now thinking about the VUCA situation, which is, the COVID, we can ask ourselves, we're at a turning point. What do we do? Do we do nothing? Do we hide? Do we act? I would say we have to act. And with the culture piece, it's about the values. Let's be clear on our values, but we have to do something. If I think about it, the companies I will be more involved in post-COVID, when I'm freer and freer to spend my money, are the ones who were generous with me. They tried their best, even if it didn't work, and they did this in a genuine way. So we have to do something. Now, what is the world we're living in? I mean, this is the definition that comes from China. Crisis, and we're living in a type of crisis, is made up of two parts. It's a danger and opportunity. So if we look at the image there of the chrysalis, something breaks and something new comes out, and in this case, it's beautiful. So I don't want us to think that it's all about danger. In any time of change and crisis, the definition of it, something breaks and something new comes. So there's an opportunity there. And before we start the little conversation, this is what we're living now. Now, this is a very well-used term, VUCA. And this was actually defined and developed by the American military to define warfare. So in a way, we can describe what we're living as like a silent war. It's the new normal. We've got used to it. We don't know what's going to happen. Innovation cycles are even faster. Before they were 10 years, now they're 1 or 2. And innovation is not just about technology, it's the way we do things. So VUCA means volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. I think we're all feeling that now. But maybe this is my idea about how to turn it around. So let's take volatile and let's try to have a vision. Maybe we need to redefine our vision on a personal and company level. And then we can take uncertainty. We have to try and understand first. So even about performance, what does it mean? It can mean many things. I want to understand what it means for each one. Then we can pull it together. Complex. We need the good glasses like Lorenzo has on. We need to have that clarity. We need to see through. And then with ambiguous, not knowing, we need to be agile. We need to try things out. We need to go fast, but we cannot be static. Okay. So that was a bit of the intro, thinking about the situation that we're living. Okay. So Lorenzo, what do you think about that stuff?
This is a very interesting approach to it, and you're right. We are at a time where we cannot afford to stand still. We need to keep on moving. Things have adapted, but you're absolutely right by saying the cycle of innovation has gone from 10 years to a year maximum, even maybe less. So there is a good question here from the unknown planet. It says, how do we build a company culture where increasingly we're working in a gig economy, but also this relates to where increasingly the innovation change is so fast that we are constantly having to change our formats of how we work.
Now that's very interesting because I talk about that a bit later on, and I've invested in a company called Unfold, and what we're doing is there's a basic problem when we talk about working online. So people talk about remote working, but that is the image of the lonely person with their computer by themselves. What we should talk about is distributed working, meaning how you engage with a group of people. And that engagement should be done in a way where you can focus and do deep work without interruption. So you set boundaries, but also it should be asynchronous. It shouldn't be like a production line where you're waiting for others to finish. We have to understand how people work at their best ability and then connect the team in that way so that people work when it suits them and when they do it best. Now, many of the most advanced startups in the world, they're almost completely distributed, meaning you never go to a common office. And you go there occasionally because you want to socialize or you have a business meeting. But they have better results than the traditional setup because people can work deeply without any interruption, and they can work in the style that's best for them. It might be at night, it might be in the morning, but they can go deeply into their work. So what we should try to do is first base the work on trust, find the best people for the job, and it's about the work. You take yourself to the project, you don't take yourself to the office. And you understand how you work as a group, almost like a neural network. So in that way, you don't mind if it's a gig, if it's people working freelance, if it's a hybrid and a mix, but that's going to happen. But it needs a different mindset, not the mindset of you have to be in the office 9 to 5, when somebody is very efficient there and they can do the job in 10 minutes and another person is completely lost. So it's that redefinition, and many tools can help us. The simplest one we all use is Google Doc. It's an incredible thing because anybody can contribute when they want. It's not a production line waiting like with a roadblock for somebody to put something down. People add to it when they can and when they feel like doing it. So bring your energy to the project. That would be my statement regarding that.
On that topic, I think also the Unknown Planet is saying, true, we have worked with the best micro entrepreneurs from the creative fields from across the world. The work is based on passion, finding the person who loves the project. You were talking about this issue of passion. And on top of that, it even says, I think it's not only the understanding anymore, but more about feeling, trusting the heart inner wisdom. You were talking about trust as well there. How do you relate to these comments?
Yeah, trust is important. I mean, but there are a few different things. We have to think about, you know, Guy Kawasaki says it well. And when I actually guide startups, I say any pitch they do should be based on the 3 keys from Kawasaki, because he says, if you have these 3 things, the project is a go. So what are the 3 things? We need expertise. It's not about just friendship. We need people at good who are what they do, whether it's logistics, marketing, blockchain, whatever. Then you need an opportunity. What is the opportunity? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to make the world a better place? What the problem you're solving? And then there's passion. Why? Because when we start something that we believe in, it's not the easy journey. It's actually the harder journey. And what passion can do, it can get us over the ups and downs. Now, especially as most of us here are entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs, we know that's not a straight line. We can write the book, we can give you the book, but it's like this. So the passion will take you over the moments when things are down. And also you'll be working with things that have meaning for you. But you can only work for meaning once you have the hygiene factor, once you have the base covered. Yeah. And then what we can do in the culture is people can give the extra, which we call discretionary effort, if the context is right. And that little bit of extra today defines the difference between good and excellent, and even maybe between success and failure.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. There's a few more comments.
Sure.
I'll let you continue with the slides and we'll
Perfect.
the
Exactly.
conversation.
So then other things, this is an image I use a lot because I've had the honor and the pleasure of working with astronauts. You can find some of my talks with them on YouTube. And I want to believe that we did get to the moon, no conspiracy theories. It's an important one for me because I was born in the year 1969. Now I ask people, what type of skills did they need to go to the moon? And the metaphor, that is a completely VUCA environment like the one we're living. It's unknown, it's volatile, it's crazy, it's ambiguous. So the COVID world is also VUCA. So when I asked this question, the interesting thing, and I've asked it to thousands of people in more than 50 countries, 70% of the words people mention are around soft skills. So when I ask them what values and abilities and attitudes are needed, they say perseverance, courage, understanding, teamwork, belief. And then at the end, they talk about, we need a rocket, we need some money. So it tells us when you want to do something exceptional, the people skills are important. The problem with that is we have not been taught much about the soft skills. We're taught about the technical stuff. And the reality, that is a 50-50. It's half technical and half soft. 500,000 people worked on the moon landing project from 35 different countries, and they communicated by fax, telephone, or letter. You cannot even imagine it today. Now, when we look that 70% of this success was around the soft people skills, which are not actually soft, they're actually very difficult because we know that the most enjoyable part of our work is working with people, but it can also be the most frustrating part. But nobody teaches us. But we have to think, what soft skills will be more important in the future? Will soft skills be more important in the future? Yes. You can look at all the research. There are certain things that are purely human. The rest will be automized with AI and robotics. So what are those things that become more valuable over the time because they're only human? Their creativity, Whatever we think, this is the most creative organ, the brain, we know in the universe, the way it can handle very dispersed, different types of information and join the dots. Also, ethics. Who decides what happens to the autonomous car when it has a problem? Does it hit the child? Does it hit the wall? Does it hit the animal? Humans will do that. And then you have things like empathy. Empathy, it's very hard for a machine to show empathy. So if you look at the future of work, it's about you thinking of having specific skills around AI, blockchain, whatever you want, machine learning. But then you need empathy, creativity, and an understanding and handling of ethics, for example, and passion. So they become valuable because they're purely human when the rest becomes automized. And that is also about teams. Having the ability to manage a diverse group of people, and diversity is not just where you're from, it's how you work, and making a success of that group of people is an incredibly powerful skill today, as teams don't depend on barriers anymore. Countries will be nationalistic because they're protecting their resources in the economy, which will be very affected, especially next year because of what's happening. But you cannot stop collaboration like we're doing now. We are a group of people connected by internet. It doesn't matter where we are. So be mindful of those skills, and the soft skills have a massive resurgence. With IE, we just signed a very big contract with Siemens, the very big engineering firm that has billions of revenue a year. And the first thing the new CEO, Roland Bolsch, asked us to do is to do teaching to their main managers around empowerment. That would be unthinkable 3 or 4 years ago, but he knows that that value and that soft skill is transversal for the company to change and keep on being relevant over the next few years. Also, just for a bit of humor there, we can link this with what we've been living about the confinement. It's also important about performance, a sense of purpose. So we might have one goal of going to space, but it means something different for each one. Look at these people. They are highly confined. They are astronauts on the International Space Station. You can see that every day at 400 kilometers. You just had a docking by SpaceX, today on the station. Do they look unhappy? No, they look very happy because there's a sense of purpose. They are having a very strong professional personal experience, but they're doing something for the betterment of humankind. So purpose is also very important for performance, but you have to understand what it means for each one. And just I'll give you a little very powerful example. Now, a few years ago, and they do all these wonderful research in the US, they did this research on people working in hospitals, the janitors and the maintenance workers. They asked them, what do you think about your job? They said, well, it pays the rent. It's not a lot of money. It's a pretty basic job. So what they did said, we're going to look at this and look at the sense of purpose. They gave the janitors and the maintenance staff 10 minutes a day with the patients in their room. And over time, they monitored the reaction. After a few months, they found out when they asked them, a big percentage said, my idea of my work has changed. I'm not just cleaning a room. I'm also helping somebody to get back to health. And that is a very big purpose. The result was, over the next few months in a period of 1.5 years, a percentage of those people trained to be nurses, and a smaller percentage, but still a number of them, trained to be doctors. What about that as an amazing result by giving a different perspective about what people are doing? It's very, very powerful. Yeah.
You touched upon so many interesting topics right now. Just to roll back to a couple of these things that I feel that the audience is also gonna connect well. This issue of purpose, and I'm trying to connect this with our startups and our entrepreneurs, and we can see this is a challenge that we have at Creative Zone. How do you keep this sense of purpose running along through your team, through your culture, through your people, when many of you are working from home? You have that disconnect in a way that you're not seeing everybody at the office every day. And I'm sure the startups are finding the same situation. They have a team of 4, 5, 6, 10, 15 employees. But how do they keep that sense of purpose alive when people are working from different places and so on?
Now, for me, I mean, you can change your mission statement over time to be relevant, But what you need to be careful of is why you're doing what you're doing. Keep it simple and focus on your values. So if you have your North Star of values which define what you do, it's very easy because you go back to that. Now, I'll give you a very simple example. Amazon. We use Amazon even more and more. This amazing startup is one of the most powerful companies in the world. We can debate about how they treat their employees, and they're working hard on that. But their mission is, we want to be the most customer-centric company in the world and universe when they start selling in space, okay? Now, it's very simple for them. And think about our own experience. 99% of the time with Amazon, the experience is perfect. The 1% it isn't, they always find a way to compensate you and find an alternative. Because when it comes to the crunch, they go back to their mission and their values, customer centricity. So what you have to do, you have to do an exercise of defining what your core values are and go back to that. I'll give you another example. Last year, I was very honored to give a talk at Dreamforce in San Francisco, which is the yearly event for Salesforce. Another startup that started 20 years ago that now has revenues of 20 billion a year. Now, they carefully defined before they earned their first dollar, a project and a purpose called Ohana. So the Ohana principle from Salesforce before they started earning money is 1% of our income, 1% of our products and services, 1% of our time we'll give to charity. Now that 1% is worth hundreds of millions a year, but I am sure it has been a key to their success, because when you work for that company, it's not just about you, you are automatically giving back. So that was an incredible thing that they did. And I'd invite you to look at the Ohana principle by Salesforce, which was developed by the founder before they earned and constituted their company. So values are very important because you give more to that, and it taps into your internal motivation, purpose. Okay, so I think having that clear is very important, because then it's like I said before, you bring your energy to the project, not to the room. You bring your focus to the values, which you can redefine, but you have clear. Yeah.
Maybe a question to put out to the attendees out there and the startups. Have we gone out to set what those values are for us? Let's say that we recently set up our companies 3 months, 6 months, 1 year ago. Are we clear on what are your values? Have you written them down on a document, on a piece of paper, so that you are sharing that? Please let us know. Write this on the chat. Say, yes, I know my values. I have them. They're written down. I visualize them and I spread them across the company. I guess this is a starting point for the entrepreneurs that are connected there today, right?
Yeah, and what I do with my companies and my students when we create teams, the first thing is I do a working agreement where we look at levels of need on an individual basis, team basis, and how we like to operate. And from there, the values come out. So it's a living document where you can add to. So it's very important to do that, to get alignment and to get that extra, because if we can work with values, we'll give more to it. So it's a very important thing to do. And it's a very simple thing. I have an older brother, and years ago, he said to me, I want to be rich. Now, is he rich? No. Because if you talk to the entrepreneurs who are very successful, they don't talk about being rich. They talk about making an impact. So if you define your values and how you want to make people's lives better or solve their problems, you will become successful. But you won't become successful by saying you want to be rich. You'll become successful by saying, I want to make an impact and be one of the best people in this area of activity. Yeah. And you can see that in the most successful people in the world. Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. I see a few comments there on the chat. Some people are saying, yes, we have our values set document. Someone also is saying that they serve a pain point, which is to create jobs. There's another good question that has come out in the Q&A box. It says, I'm in a manufacturing industry. We are a B2B type of business. How can I instill a sense of purpose to our blue-collar workers who are inside a factory the whole day?
Now, for me, it's about having the bigger view. So normally in that type of company, everything is segmented. So the person working in the factory is only working in the factory. The person doing the marketing is only doing the marketing. What you should give everybody same information about the impact of the product and service you give. So if people know the impact of what they do, your purpose changes immediately. Now, I'll give you an personal example. I was an aid worker in East Timor, very dangerous country in civil war in 2006, but I was in the management area. And I got very frustrated because it was very political working with the UN. So then I decided the next time I do something like that, I'll be working directly with the beneficiary, because then I will see the impact of my work. So what I would say is, don't take people away from the impact of what your company is doing. Let them also understand the person who's in the factory making this little piece of machinery. Let them understand what you do as a company, how it makes people's lives better. Do not reserve that conversation for your marketing team, your sales team. Let everybody know. Because if you realize that what you're doing is helping others, that elevates what you're doing. So it's something important to do, but it's common for it to happen when we silo the white collar, the blue collar, and the different departments of a company. And if you look at it, people like Google, even the Google founders, every Thursday, they talk to all the workers in the company to tell them what the company is doing and how they're advancing and helping people and solving their problems. That's something that you can do, and you can start doing at any time, because everything we do has an impact. And also when you work, there's a very famous poem called Desiderata. It talks about we're all cogs in the wheel. So we're all helping towards a bigger picture, but let people see the bigger picture. Yeah.
True. Another good question here, somebody is asking, can you share more information about the working agreement?
Yes.
It sounds like a valuable document to create with a small team that this person owns in his company.
Yes, it's a very simple thing. It came out of my mediation work, because when we talk to people about understanding and moving forward, a lot of the time we talk about what we want. But if you say what you want is a position, we cannot define that. What we have to talk about is what you need, because it's something very specific. So what we do is we make a simple Excel, a document with 3 columns: the needs, individual needs, group needs, team needs, and task needs. And then you ask each member of the group to define a few important points. So one of my needs would be open communication. What does that mean? I would like to be able to talk to my colleagues at any time about good and bad stuff. Great. Team need, what do you expect from your team? I would like a supportive team. So go behind the word and explain, what does support mean for you? Well, I wouldn't want all the information to be shared. I want us to help each other to actually learn and build on our weaknesses. And third task is, how do you like to organize? Because everyone has different ideas. So you individually think about them, you share those points, you go behind the words, and then you discuss them. And then you get to a much deeper understanding. And it's a very powerful tool that needs a couple of hours of work with the team, but it helps you to define an initial living document around your mission statement. And it helps you to understand what's behind the words. Because if I say respect, great, we all agree respect and trust are important, but the problem is they mean different things for each person. If you ask me, being an English person, born and brought up in London, what does respect mean for me in work? It means getting early to the meeting. If I ask somebody in Africa about that, respect will mean showing respect to the elderly. It's a completely different thing, okay? So we have to go behind the words, because we'll all agree that respect and trust are nice, but we all have a different definition about them. That's when we start to understand, when we know what's going behind. And I'd like to ask quickly, Lorenzo, who's a very seasoned leader, what does trust mean for you?
Oh, wow.
Which is one of the big values.
Yeah. Trust is a big word. I mean, it's the foundation of any successful relationship, whether in business, in family, in friendship. It's the beginning of once you have set that emotion, everything else falls into place, because you know that with your eyes closed, you can continue, you can do certain things, knowing that the trust is there and that is in place. Nothing else can stop you. The moment that you start doubting about trust, nothing else works, because you're not sure that you can make that investment. There's no document in the world that will safeguard you from a bad partnership. So my God, trust is
It's the
big.
big one. And also it's something that you build, and it's
Yeah,
something you cannot buy and you can lose very easily.
true.
Yeah. So just by, if I was with 5 of you in a group, I'd want you all to explain what trust means for you. And already we're advancing in the dialogue and the mutual understanding.
Beautiful. Here somebody says,
Yeah,
trust, living up to your commitment to your people and your common purpose.
exactly. And very powerful, very simple, but we need to hear it from each other. So you create a context where people can go beyond the banner words, because they mean nothing. And it's building, when I talk about teams, it's building a foundation. Why has Machu Picchu been there for hundreds of years? Why has the Taj Mahal, the pyramids in Egypt? Because they worked on the foundation. So the team is the same. If you work on the foundation, the team will be like a tree, resilient and adapt to the circumstance. If you don't put the roots, the wind will make it fall, next day.
Excellent points. I'll let you continue with the
Yes,
rest.
let's continue. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
these are talking points, I wanted to share as much as possible. So trust for me is the big one, especially now in a volatile world. We need things that give us comfort and security. So, but what does it mean? This is the definition of it, is to believe that someone is good and honest and will not harm you, and something is safe and reliable. So that's what we need to show, especially in volatile times. Even there's a barometer that analyzed it, and they found out in 2018, 70% of the main job of the CEO is to build trust. But it's a big word. We've got to break it down. What does it mean? For me, it's the most important value today in crisis times. So the trust triangle for me is, it applies to the leader. They have to be able to show trust, the talent who feel the trust in the organization, and then the customer. Because if the customer trusts us, they will come back to us and we'll have a dialogue with them. We can adapt our product and service to them. And it's made up of 3 things. So if you want trust at whatever stakeholder it is, you have to be authentic. And that's being natural, that's being you, that's being truthful, saying things respectfully, but being straight. It's like if I have to fire somebody, everybody will appreciate that I've been straight and honest with them, and I'm actually being responsible about telling them. That the way you tell something is sometimes more important than the actual message. Then the empathy. We all like to feel a connection. And then logic. We need credible data. I'm not going to believe you if it's not real data that we can contrast. It's authentic, it's clear, and it's important and reliable, and it's credible. So these are the things that we have to show, especially in the times that we're living, on the different levels. Leader, group of people, and to your client. Also, again, we touched on this before, values. And Disney is surprising. If you look at Walt Disney, Roy Disney, there are many powerful quotes. So it's not hard to make decisions once you know your values are. So if you're clear on your values, these are your North Star, you can go back to them. And normally values are not things that you change, okay? Also, high performing company, and most of us are in innovative companies, trust and these values are part of innovation. And innovation, it's a very simple thing. If we talk about an idea, actually the idea is not very important, it's more execution, and that depends on the team. Then you have to create something, then you validate it. But then there's a very interesting concept I'm using a lot now called disruptive innovation. And disruptive innovation is different to normal innovation. The powerful thing about it, it doesn't depend on money or technology always. Most people don't know what it is. People think disruptive innovation is more or game changer. It can be, but let's just understand what it is, because it's very applicable today, because it's not just about tech and money, and we can all employ it. So this was the definition of disruptive innovation from the inventor in his book, Clayton Christensen, Harvard professor. He died earlier this year, unfortunately. He said disruptive innovation, this concept we hear so much, is not necessarily more, it's about competing against the non-consumer. Now, if we look at that, you think, what is he talking about? Give you an example. This pen. Now, if I see a company making this pen, I can say, I'll also make the pen because, you know, this is very popular, but it's very difficult to displace this company because they are strong market hold, whether it's big, stable or whatever. Now, what we can think about is creating a new market. So what he's saying there is, if we compete against a non-consumer, we're creating a market of new people who are consuming. So if we create a market of new people who are consuming, we have no competition. And there are many models using that today. Think about the banking sector. There are companies in Europe like N26 and Revolut. They realize that the under 25s, they do everything on their mobile phone. They don't go to a bank branch. So they realize the banking today is software. So they have developed apps where you can open an account in less than half an hour. You pay less commission. You can do everything on your mobile phone. They have adapted to the people that the traditional banks lost. So it's not always about high tech. It's not always about high investment. It's about being creative and finding new markets. And also there's an emotional connection. I'm using right now an HP computer because I'm waiting to flip to my new Apple. But when you buy a PC, you don't care about the brand because you're looking at how much does it cost? What technical spec do I get? But when you want an Apple computer, it can only be Apple. So when you have an emotional connection with your client, as Apple does, you don't become a trader. You're not just trading on price. So another thing we have to think about today is experience. What is the experience for our talent? What is the experience for our customer? And with this one, we can continue. So if you think about some of the most amazing inventions in the world are very simple, and they're about people's needs at a certain time. Now, the common things about these ones, you can look it up on Wikipedia, they're all Spanish innovations. And I mentioned them because I live in Spain. Now, my message is, you know, sometimes we think, you know, only the amazing stuff comes from Silicon Valley. No, it can come from anywhere. The most advanced mobile phone payment systems comes from West Africa. We know in the Middle East and Africa, amazing stuff is happening. But the example I want to give is the Chupa Chup, the inventors of the lollipop. So this is my favorite one. And if I was with you, I'd be gifting you one each. This is the Coca-Cola flavor. Now, this was a company, they were selling round hard sweets in the 1950s. And in 1958, the company decided we're going to put a stick on the sweet. Now, why did they do that? Because if you give something like this to your child, you're worried that they can swallow it and choke. And also, you know, as a parent, you want to feel safe. And so what they did, they put the stick on it, but not any stick. The Chupa Chup stick is hollow. So if a child swallows it, they can still breathe. So the parent is happy and the child like it. We're talking about 1958 because it looked different. Children love novelty, okay? Now they were incredibly successful. You know, this was the lollipop was developed by them. They even sent lollipops, Chupa Chups to space. And in 1968, they asked one of the most famous artists who ever lived to design this logo, which in itself was revolutionary because it's on the top of the sweet. This logo was designed by Salvador Dali.
Wow.
Okay, so I always carry a Chupa Chup to say to myself, disruptive innovation doesn't always have to be complex. It's also a work of art. Sometimes being simple is the challenge. And in today's world, simplicity can go very far because it's something we can connect with. Okay.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Are these innovations that you're showing are mainly done from Spain?
All of them are from Spain, actually, and you can look them up. I mean, there's some interesting examples about passion and from the heart. Now, if you look at table football, this was a really incredible thing because it was a gentleman. He saw that many children were actually harmed in the Spanish Civil War. And at certain areas, there were mines and many children lost their limbs. So he decided with a group of people, I want these children who have disability to enjoy the beautiful sport of football. Now, once you know the story, your idea about this game changes completely. Everything is done with a heart or a reason. The cigarette, they said the origin of the cigarette was the gypsies these are nomads, they are poor people. They would find the pipe tobacco in the street, and what they do, they'd wrap them, in a paper. And that's where the cigarette came from. So that was out of necessity.
Mm,
Things like, the mop,
mm,
that's something that's changed our lives, such a simple thing.
mm,
So even if we look in all of your countries, you have made things that have changed the lives of people around the world. You
mm,
just have to scratch a little bit. You can
mm,
all be proud. And I also want to say innovation doesn't belong to one place. It doesn't belong to Japan. It doesn't belong to Silicon Valley. It is everywhere. If you do things with a passion and you understand how to solve people's problems. Okay.
And what is the profile of this type of disruptive innovators? Who are we talking about? Are we talking about young, up and coming startup entrepreneurs? Are these corporations that are already in existence?
Yeah, I mean, it can be all sort of profiles as long as they create a new market. It's not always about technology. So disruptive innovation is about creating the new market, and it could be extremely simple things. I'll give you an example. There was one company in India called Cavan Care selling shampoo, and they were selling to the middle class. The bottle was $3. Now they said, should we sell to the people with more money? Difficult. We have to change the formula, the packaging, and the marketing. How can we sell to the people who earn $3 a day, family of 5, who use hard soap on their hair? They did brainstorming, they came together and they said, we will sell the shampoo in a one-use sachet in the small villages all around India. There was an incredible success because even the poorest people said, for a couple of cents a month, I can try the shampoo and I can aspire to own the bottle. Now that model of the one-use sachet is used now by the big firms like Procter & Gamble and Unilever when they sell soaps, detergents, and others, especially in developing countries. So this is for anybody, but what you have to develop is a culture where people are willing to contribute, add more, and be creative. And that's something you can set up. You have to make the context. For me, everything is the context. Yes?
So to our startups out there, we have about 70 people connected. Are we innovating? Are we disrupting our industry? Are we bringing something new to the table? Or are we part of an industry and an existing industry, and you are sort of another player that is coming into the industry? Give us some of your comments. Tell us a little bit about what is it that you're implementing. Maybe we can pick a few ideas and pull Balvinder's brain and give some feedback on a little bit of what we read from your stories in the meantime.
And there's another thing I want to say, if you don't mind me saying the word, we're always obsessed with sexy business. And it's not always about sexy business. It's about doing things at work. Now,
Mm,
on Friday, I was having a drink with a very good friend, Vikram, and he's a multi-millionaire working with real estate and now gold mines in Colombia. He's very successful, okay? And he told me, he said, Bal, when I was younger, I wanted to be a tech entrepreneur, but I realized to be a good tech entrepreneur, I have to have the best talent in the world. I have to be in the top 3. And that's very difficult. So what he decided is to get into business that helps everybody. So he got into real estate, he got into gold, and he said, in these businesses, even if I'm number 51 in the world as a real estate fund or a gold fund, I'm still doing extremely well. So it's not always about what's sexy. It's about helping people with their problems and their needs. It's not always about reinventing the wheel, but we can always improve in what we're doing. I love companies who improve on something very simple that everybody needs. They just
mm,
make it easier. And
mm,
that's actually a challenge because it's easy to add layers to things. When we see something so beautiful like the Chupa Chup, its simplicity didn't come overnight, but that is its pleasure, that is its success. It's so simple and effective. Yeah.
mm. Excellent, excellent notions. I think we're learning so much out of this session
That's
today.
right. Let me give you some more, yeah?
Yeah,
So,
please, please.
for me, we'd always talk right now about performance and digital, but for me, that's secondary. If I give you digital tools and you don't know why you're using them, it's not going to work. So think about the culture of your company, those foundations, the teams and the values, and that will lead you to the performance, because human-led innovation. If you're in a company that needs creativity, look after your people. People come up with ideas, not robots. So you have to look after them creatively, and people won't come up with ideas if the culture isn't right. Coming up with ideas is a very high order of magnitude in Maslow's hierarchy. It's at the top. Then measuring performance, we talked about, this is a main part of this. There are many ways to measure this, but I would like you to think about internal and external ways to measure, because if your team are good, they're more likely to respond well, especially in a crisis time like we're living. So there are many ways to measure performance. You can look at the finance, you can look at the profit and loss, the cash flow. Are we making money? Yes. Customer satisfaction. What does our customer say? How do we understand our customer so we can offer better products and services? Growth. How many new customers are we building every week, every month? Performance reviews, relevance in the market, and also your own expectations, okay? But we have to be clear, even if you're doing social business, if it doesn't, look after itself or stand on its own legs, if it's not sustainable financially, it's not going to work. So whatever we do, we have to be financially sustainable. That is important. If you don't pay for it, somebody else will, okay? Now I'll give you quick examples and we can talk a bit more. These are all companies that I've worked with, and they've all been very careful about thinking about their purpose, but also adapting. So Mercedes-Benz is a great example. And a few years ago, their vision and their mission was, we are a premium car manufacturer. But they realized a few years ago it didn't make sense anymore, because people are using cars more and more, but they're buying them less, because people are leasing, people are doing car share, they're renting. So what they did, they spent a lot of time to redefine their statement of who they are. And they said, Mercedes-Benz, we're a mobility company. Now, doing that helped them to be relevant and also grow in new areas. So now Mercedes-Benz is actually working in the building of smart cities. Okay. I gave Salesforce example. Another example is Santander. They were not connecting with the 25 and unders. These people don't go to a bank branch. So recently, many of their branches, they've converted into a free co-working in premium locations around the world, especially in Madrid. So you as a young person can go to this place, you can be there all day with very nice internet, and you can work. Now they've done that in a very brave way because it's not connected to KPIs. It's about engagement. And they know later on they can monetize. And they also did that with employees. They have a policy, and I've done a lot of work with them, called simple, personal, and fair. So what they do is they said, we need to innovate more. But if I compensate people on financial performance, they're not going to innovate. So part of the bonus of the employees is related to behaviors which help to create an innovation environment. So it's how collaborative you are, how supportive are your colleagues, how assertive you are about exchanging your ideas. And a percentage of the bonus is linked, because in the end, culture change is very difficult, but if it affects your wallet, you're going to do something about it. So please, any other questions? So I'm mindful of time. We have 10 minutes left.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, SpaceX is a great example. Look what they've done today. They've taken astronauts to the International Space Station as a provider to NASA. Now, the space industry was normally a public industry controlled by governments. They're a very successful private space firm, and it was a crazy thing by Elon Musk to do this. Now, what they've done is absolutely exceptional, because they developed their own technology to go to space. And that is an incredible thing to do. And now they're reaping the benefits. Now, I've actually met the CEO of SpaceX, is a lady, Gwynne Shotwell. And she told me 2 years ago, people don't realize SpaceX wasn't waiting to make money. A couple of years ago, they were already making $20 billion a year in satellite launches. So what they've done to get space to become a financially sustainable private industry is absolutely amazing. So that is a risk taker. Elon Musk, he's a very hard guy to work with. I know somebody worked with, and he would expect people working 12, 14 hours a day, because that's what he does. But he's a risk taker. He earned 300 million from PayPal. Most of us, let's be honest, even Lorenzo, With 300 million, you buy your island, invite us for barbecues, a nice time. But what he did, Elon actually invested 300 million. He took all the risk in 3 companies: SpaceX, SolarCity, and Tesla. You don't hear much about SolarCity, very successful, but think about Tesla and SpaceX. So that's risk taking, and that's belief. And what he does, he surrounds himself with the best experts in the field. He doesn't have to be the best, but he creates a context for the best people to outperform because they have everything they need in the company.
Mm-hmm. There's some great tips on those things, Balvinder. Veronica here is saying, I think my disrupting innovation is in creativity and personal development services mix and how it's delivered.
Yeah, exactly. Because remember, it's about creating a new market. It's about actually adapting what you're doing to a new group of people who are not being served. And it's also about the experience for them. So not all businesses are totally disruptive, but some are disruptive in some way. So when we talk about it, people mention Airbnb and Uber. Now they're very disruptive in the business model because think about it. Airbnb offers transport. Sorry, Airbnb offers accommodation, but they own no real estate. Uber offer transport, but they own no vehicles. But their business model is very unique on a traditional business. We've always stayed in buildings, we've always taken taxis, but they've disrupted the industry by the business model, and these are unicorns. They're worth billions. So they've taken traditional industry and applied a completely different business model. And that is very interesting because they are the oldest industries out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In some of these examples that you're sharing, Balvinder, are there some common attributes or personality traits that you can list so that the attendees, the entrepreneurs here, the startups can relate to and say, well, if I have these attributes, if I have these personality traits, I am more likely to become successful?
I would say, first of all, define the problem you want to solve. Also define what your values are because they don't change. And also create an environment where you can have the best talent possible working towards those goals. I think they are very common things because if you look at the entrepreneurs behind them, they have been able to bring those resources together. They haven't, they're not doing this by themselves. So it's the way you create the environment around you and the context for people to work together to create common value. I think that is probably the common thing to it. And also not taking no for the answer and saying it's not possible. Now, if I told you 100 years ago, you will carry a mobile phone, this piece of metal and glass, and you'll talk to anybody you want around the world, you would have burnt me and say that I have some devil inside me. Okay. So being the pioneer actually means that, as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want something to happen, you have to be the first to do it. Now, the first time you start, I know from experience, it's very unlikely your first idea will be successful, but you start on a journey. And when you learn from failure and success, you'll refine, and finally something will good come out of it. Now, it doesn't have to be about changing the world. Even starting a shop, a small shop, a bakery, and your success mission is to provide for your family, that is a very noble thing and not such an easy thing to do. But the same principles that go into that will be the same ones going into building a SpaceX.
Now, what tips can we give to entrepreneurs in order to bridge that gap between having this incredible idea like SpaceX, and he was dreaming about, flying people around in the universe, and turning that into a successful running startup? I mean, just to give a funny story, I remember myself back in the year 2000 when I was in my last year at university. My dissertation was that I wanted to build a system what Netflix is today. But in the year 2000, the technology did not exist. All we had was the VHS cassettes, and you would go to Blockbusters and you will rent movies. And I said, well, it would be great if we can have a business model where people can live stream whatever movie they want and so on. But the technology didn't exist. So it's easy to come up with the ideas. How do we implement them into successful business ventures.
Now, sometimes timing is just wrong. You know, think about Apple. Apple is not the most inventive company in the world. And actually the iPod, the base of it was invented by a company called RIA. But what they did, they were too early. So what Apple did, they knew how to market it with the right timing. But what is essential is you can't do everything by yourself. So especially in a tech business, you have to surround yourself by the best people you can regarding the technology and build it together. So that's very important. It's what you build around you and the energy you get around you. Otherwise, it's impossible. Now, the other week, because we're writing a book about digital innovation with somebody, Lindsay Jones from Financial Times, we actually interviewed the international business developer for Zoom. And he told us part of their amazing success is they had some of the best telecom engineers in the world, including the founder, Mr. Yuan, in the base team. And that was key to it. So remember, you cannot do everything yourself. Now, Elon Musk is an amazing guy. He's not a very good communicator. He's very, very focused, but he cannot do this by himself. So when I met Gwynne Shotwell, who's the CEO of SpaceX, the first question to her was, how do you manage Elon? And she said, my job is to take his crazy ideas and make them into sustainable business. So you have to first have the humility to think you cannot do everything, understand your strengths, and then find collaborators who can fill the team for you and complete the team to have the expertise that the project needs. I think that's the most important thing. And I find it a lot with founders. A lot of the time they're together because of passion and friendship, but we have to identify the strengths and the expertise, and they have to complement what the company is trying to do. And I think that's very, very important. And have the resilience. You know, Steve Jobs, he was adopted. He only studied calligraphy at university because he's worried about his parents' financial resources. He was thrown out of Apple, but he didn't stop. If you believe in something, take it to the furthest level you can. And where there's a way, and there's a means and a willingness, you'll make it happen. Yeah.
100%, 100%. Well, we are reaching to the end of this session for today. I'd like to encourage anybody that has any more questions. My God, you have so many more slides.
No, it's okay. Well, we had a very big conversation, and there was just but I'd like to finish with this one, with the heart.
Go ahead.
Now, and please, Lorenzo, if people ask for the presentation, you have it, please exchange them with PDF. Now, I'd like to finish with this. We talked about the heart. It's very important to me. And a few years ago, I did a course at Brown University in the US, and they talked about love in business. And some people said, are you a hippie? Well, I used to be what I had here. But really, they said there are two important things. When you do something, create a context so people can do it to their best ability. So you create a beautiful garden so people can give their best. And also when you do something, think about the impact of it on others. And I think that second piece is especially important now when we're entering your homes, you know, you're working from home, and that we know everybody has a story or a burden to share. So whatever happens because of what we're living, if it can make us more compassionate, more caring about each other, that will be a big success. We're not losing everything. It's also an opportunity to break and define, how do I want to live? How do I want to create value? And that can only be a good thing, even though we don't know what that is at the moment. But we have time to reflect on it.
That's incredible. And I see a few comments coming in. Thank you very much. This was an absolute awesome session, so insightful. Please share, Lorenzo, the presentation. Malvinder, I think everybody's so keen to get their hands on your presentation. Maybe one final question. What book can you recommend for the people looking at this attendees to read?
There are so many books. It depends how you want to look at it. If you're talking about entrepreneurship, I mean, I have many of them here. There's so many, that I read. For example, I'd probably think the one I love is The Art of Start by Guy Kawasaki. This is a great a book, because he's very straight talking, and he has the model which I use with my startups about 3 things you need: expertise, opportunity, and passion. So The Art of Start. Wonderful book about entrepreneurship. And also I read a lot about philosophy, about culture, and about doing good things. And I'll say my quote again from Gandhi: be the change you want to see in the world. You have to start, don't look at others, and then things will be okay.
Balvinder, it was an absolute pleasure. You
Pleasure
are
for me,
one of
Lorenzo.
the greatest minds I had the pleasure to ever sit with and enjoy such a session. I think I can speak on behalf of all attendees that we truly thank you. It's such an honor to have someone with such knowledge, such an important professor of a renowned business university school in Spain. To all the attendees, you have his details there, his LinkedIn page, his email. Please contact Balvinder if you would like to ask any more information, anything that you would like to share. I think we're privileged to have had this session with you, Balvinder. At Creative Zone, we look forward to engaging with you further and see what other work we can do together.
Perfect.
And to all the attendees, thank you again so much. We'll be sharing the presentation and we'll be sharing the entire link to this video of today. Balvinder.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you, everyone. Pleasure.
Your final comments for today, and we'll wrap it up.
No, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to everybody for making it possible. We spent months preparing this. Thank you, Lorenzo, for your kindness. Thank you, everyone, for taking your time. And I'd only ask you, as somebody myself who suffered from COVID recently, be safe, be careful, think about everybody else has a burden. Let's be generous and let's make what's happening and convert it into something good so we can live in a better way where we can include more people in progress. But mainly take care of yourselves and your loved ones. And if you feel that something's happening to you, check it out. You know, your health is first. So let's focus on those things and let's try to inspire each other and to grow together. And then I definitely think, you know, we're making a better world for ourselves and others.
Thank you so much, Balvinder. A real pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, pleasure. Lorenzo, we'll talk, yeah?
We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.